selection of companies for the best practices for the year 2018 to 2019. He has added number of research papers and publications to his credit, and he is expert in the subject of labor legislations and industrial relations. He has given centum results in various HR specialized subjects in the university examinations. We welcome you, sir. This meeting is recorded for education purposes. In case of any doubts or questions, the participants can unmute themselves or type the questions in the chat box. Now I request Dr. N.C. Martin to speak a few words about the topic for the day.
Yeah, thank you, Mashmi, for the introduction.
Thank you, sir.
So, very happy good evening to one and all present here. So, on behalf of our management, Sri Ashok Kumar Mudraji and our principal, Captain Dr. S. Santosh Babu. So, I welcome all the participants, students, professors, HR fraternities, and dear friends. So, it's my immense pleasure to welcome our resource person of the day, Sir Mr. Ramamurthy Krishna, CEO, Potential Genesis, for giving his consent to host a webinar for us on the topic of cognitive intervention, essential skill for HR. So, the coming to the conceptual understanding of the cognitive skills. The cognitive skills, you can say, it is one of the very important skills where our brain uses to think, read, learn, remember, and also reasoning, and also making us to pay attention for every task we do and the task we perform. So the process of the receiving information will start from the brain, and it takes the information we receive and it moves into the bank of knowledge that we use in everyday life and in every walks of our life. So it can also be put in another way that the cognitive skills are the mental capabilities. So we can say like a perception, reasoning capability, so which are very important to process any information, and also to gain knowledge. So other necessary skills for an HR, it could be the intuition skill. So this skill is also very important for human resource executives who help to determine the potential and the quality of interpersonal relationships. So these skills will help to recognize the attributes, the traits, and also the various characteristics of the new incumbents. So uh, that helps to understand how the new employees can fit into the organization culture. So whereas the intuition will help the HR staff to go for the right selection of the applicants. So based on how their professional qualities so will fit into the workplace culture. So the other essential skills for HR will be the logic and reasoning. So this is very necessary for building a harmonious employer and employee relations. So these skills are very essential for conducting um, interviews, investigation, that is conducting, investigating on day-to-day issues, understanding the employees' problems and grievances, so that the HR could formulate a very suitable policy to enhance better understanding and building a healthy relationships among both the employer and the employees. So the reasoning skills is also a very important one. So it plays a very helpful for healthy negotiation to say like investigate, mediate, and also to settle any workplace complaints and conflicts. So the another skill we can say is multitasking. So we all know that HR uh, uh, does various activities, that is multitasking, and it is their skill that it is very essential ability in order to perform various tasks. So in a single time, so they may be doing like payroll management, appraisal, and taking disciplinary action, and so on, so on. So by means of performing the multitasking, so the overall hiring cost also get reduced. So when HR staff is capable of performing the role of a multitask, So the question of hiring another staff will not arise, and the overall cost of the manpower requirement also get reduced. So the critical thinking also, it's one of the very another important skill, I could say that. So everyone, so it is very necessary, especially for HR staff, and they are being entrusted with a higher responsibility where critical thinking plays a very vital role. So normally the human resource are the strategic leaders. So they have been interested with various informations, the data, and their projects, and also they foresee plans pertaining to their employees as well as the entire organization. So hence the business ethics, principles, and discipline are very essential for attaining the organization vision. So having said that, so the HR leaders must have the ability to use their discretion, keeping in mind about their employees and the organization. And they should always put the interest of the company first. So the analytical and critical thinking skills are very important to maintain and safeguard the confidential information and data. So on the whole, I could say the success of the organization depends on how an HR strategist is plans in a long run, or that it should be cautious in maintaining and safeguarding the confidentiality and also the organizational data and information, where critical thinking skills plays a very crucial role. So with this, I conclude and leave the session to a resource person who is the right person to throw much light and share his expertise and experience on the wonderful area of cognitive skills needed skills for every HR. Thank you. All the best.
Good evening to all of you, and thank you, Mr. Martin and Moshimi, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to visit your campus, virtually, of course, and to be able to talk to all of you about the area of cognitive intervention. The session would need to be much more interactive. Initially, I said I wouldn't want to have any slides at all, but given the numbers of people that I was told it would be around 35, 40, I did design some presentation slides, which can also be passed on to you. But more the question, the more the merrier, and that's when we could actually learn. Just give me a second, let me share my screen, and then we'll get on with that topic. Do let me know if my slides is visible. And once we confirm it is, then I will start on.
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Great. So as you can see that the session today is around why is it or what makes cognitive intervention very important part of the HR skill armory. We would keep our presentation around 40 to 45 minutes. Questions are welcome as we go along. There is no need or necessity for you to wait to ask the questions at the end. Short questions as we go along are more than welcome. Any long questions, we can take it at the end. Content for today, we'll be talking about the three parts of the brain: the security office, the operations and the quality control department. We'll also be looking at the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, and we'll also take a deep dive into the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, and how these four departments function together, and where is our focus at any given point of time. What is the importance of focus on cognitive wellness? How does the focus improve productivity? How does the focus also improve psychological wellness? So that's what we're going to be talking today. If you really see the percentage of challenge that we have today, the 85% of the challenge is challenge of focus. What do I mean by challenge of focus? We are more internally distracted as much as we are externally distracted. The subject for today is about the internal distractions. What does the internal distraction do to psychological wellness? What does the internal distraction do to productivity, to safety? And safety, by safety I mean not the physical safety, yes, it's important, the psychological safety. And how can we regain more safe, stable ground by changing our focus? That's what we are going to be talking about. What we focus, like Dr. Martin said, is where your data comes from, both the external world and the internal world. And how do we process this data? The second biggest challenge that we have is our thinking challenge. Very loosely, we can categorize the thinking into fixed mindset, growth mindset, positive mindset, less positive mindset. I'm not getting to any of those. As professionals or budding professionals, and both professionals around the call, we're well aware of them, so that's not what I'm going to be talking about. How focus can change our thinking. Coming next to the deceptive brain signals, and the key word is deceptive. This deceptive brain signal is where big time challenge lies. And the deceptive brain signal comes from our thinking, which in turn comes from focus, which can be both internal focus and external focus. And the deceptive brain signals majorly drives emotions. And when the emotions are stronger, the focus are much more internal than external. And the last one, the last 24 months, 18 to 24 months, I've been working on understanding people's response type and what seems to cause deceptive brain signals driving emotions is individuals more apt or more skilled in fawning response and freezing response. That's what you're going to be putting together, and that's what we put together into an instrument or tool or whatever you want to call, a test if you may want to call, to assess this, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But before I move on, just want to pass and take any questions that you may have on this slide. I'll wait for a few seconds. If there aren't any questions, then I will move on. If there are, I would love to take them. Yeah, is there a question?
So there's a question in the chat box.
Go ahead.
Jayashree is asking, what is fawning?
Fawning is our ability to say yes when we should be saying no. Our ability to please people when we should not. And this is where we take on lot of workload, lot of tasks when we should not be taking them on. That's what fawning is all about. If we just freeze, we just take on things. In very simple terms, in organizations, When managers ask you to do something, when you know it's not going to happen within the time schedule is drawing, is asking it to be done, we still say yes. And in the process, our focus shifts internally to stress, sending deceptive brain signal, arousing the emotions, pushing our thinking challenge to be less than optimistic, and thereby we get into a cycle of stress. Did I answer that question, or does it need more explanation? Right. Any other questions? My own small informal research clearly shows big time problem is fawning, and that fawning is leading to freezing. And when we freeze, we become what I call intact. What I mean by intact is intentions are good, actions are not. Therefore, we stay where we are, and we are saddled by emotions. So let's take a quick, short, deep dive into understanding what does the thinking challenge do to us. One, our nervous system, the most misunderstood, or I wouldn't say misunderstood, the one that has been focused, especially in the field of human resources, is all the time scanning for information. It is not about perception anymore. It's about neuroception. And what do we mean by neuroception? Is the nervous system scanning for threat signals all the time. And what does it do? We'll talk about that. What else does thinking challenge do to us? We tend to focus more from what we have learned before. Call it loosely comfort zone. If we have to move out of comfort zone into the learning zone, then your nervous system is going to perceive threat. And the moment it perceives threat, we tend to go back into the comfort zone. More. Our inability to inhibit the deceptive brain signals. Brain is sending all the time information to protect us from threat and danger, supported by the nervous system. Right. So together, the data from the brain is transmitted by the nervous system, and in specific, the vagus nerve, carries information up and down the brain to body and the other way. And 80% of the information goes from body to brain. And 20% of the information comes from brain to body. So the 80% of information that we send to the brain is critical for psychological and physical wellness. It will be a bit too late to inhibit them. But if we can work at the level of neuroception, inhibition does not become a necessity. But if we don't work at the level of neuroception, inhibition is the next other alternative that we have. I'll do one more and then take questions. And the last is our dominant emotions. And the dominant emotion comes from having not inhibited an emotions and reapprise the emotions, relabeling our memory. We take that for granted. We never do that. So the more we use certain emotions, the more we tend to use them again and again and again. Because you know that neurons that wire together, fire together, and therefore if they are activated once, they are more easier to activate again. And that's the cycle we get into ourselves. Passing there for questions before I move on. All right. I'll take it as no questions. Okay. So, what is the difference between perception and neuroception? Very important to know that. And how does both perception and neuroception influence the employee engagement? What have organizations pre-COVID done about employee engagement? What organization needs to do post-COVID about employee engagement? And the simple shift is, pre-COVID, we are talking about employees' perception of engagement. Post-COVID, we have to move towards employee neuroception of the environment and how that shapes perception and therefore our well-being. In short, perception is based on past experience. Neuroception is based on the reality inside. Perception is based on needs and motives. Euroception based on the story we tell ourselves, the narratives that we are deciding. And those narratives tend to become reality for the brain. And you guys know that. Brain cannot differentiate between perception and reality. Whatever is produced to the brain will work on. Perception is based on individual personality, our upbringing, our nature and nurture formation. Neuroception is based on our biology. It's the same for all. And biology tends to be the same for all. So how our nerves works on is exactly the same for every other person. Lastly, perception is based on values and attitude. Euroception is based on the information effects. Passing the questions.
I'm sorry, sir, your voice kind of broke, so I couldn't
At
hear
what point?
perception and
did it break?
neuroception, the one that you just said.
Okay, let me go all over again. Is the voice any better now?
For now, I can
Yes.
hear. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, in simple terms, perception is based on past experiences. We use the past to perceive. And neuroception is based on the reality inside. Building on, perception is based on individual needs and motives. Neuroception is the narratives, the stories that we tell ourselves from moment to moment. It's based on personality, which means it's very individualistic. How we have been nurtured, what is the nurturing, how we have been nurtured, and also a bit of nature. Neuroception, since it's based on biology, it's the same for all. The neurons, the nervous system work exactly the same as it works for every other individual in the world. Perception is based on values and attitudes. Neuroception is based on the information we focus. The information we focus drives the narrative we tell ourselves. The narrative we tell ourselves drives the reality of the story. That is the perception. So it's all about information focus and what is the narrative that we are talking about. Hoping that
So I just have a question, sir. Sir, is narrative actually the assumption which we tend to create within our own frame of mind?
that
Are
would
you
be
talking about the
perception.
story that we tell ourselves? Is that uh, the assumptions that we create, or the which could be sometimes a false assumption, which is not based on the true reality.
Stories are
Or
stories.
okay,
I don't know whether they're real or false. Stories are stories, right? If you tell yourself the so-called positive stories, I don't understand what positive story is, but simply using the term positive story, then the experience of the nervous system is going to be positive, and 80% of the information goes to the brain is positive. If the story that you're telling yourself is less positive, then the 80% of information goes to the brain is less positive. It can be assumption, it can be real, it can be perceived, it can be in.
okay, so thank you.
Sir, one more question.
Go ahead, go ahead.
It looks like perception is in our control and neuroception is not in our control. Am I right? And how
Euroception is in your control to the extent you are able to manage the narratives.
okay.
Right? If you tell yourself the story, then you are able to control the neuroception. Apart from the fact, the the nervous system is also exposed to the external threat. As an example, COVID this time, right? So therefore, there's always the external influence on the nervous system. But there's also the internal focus, which I spoke about in the first slide.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So there are two questions in the chat box. Shall I read them?
Yeah, please.
Is neuroception a friend or foe?
Mhm.
And how to use both effectively?
Both of which we'll answer in the coming slides.
Okay, sir.
So, what is neuroception? First, be aware that neuroception is a term coined by Dr. Stephen Porges. He describes how the neural circuitry distinguishes whether the situation or people are safe, dangerous, or life-threatening. So I think that should answer the question whether the neuroception is foe or friend. You can make it a foe by sending the narratives you want. You can make it a friend by sending the narratives you want. So it's all the time scanning for stories that will make me feel safe, that will make me feel dangerous, that makes me feel life. In simple terms, if a baby is able to feel comfortable in the hands of the caregiver, or the same baby feels less comfortable in the hands of a stranger, the answer lies in the reception. Now I pass on the questions. And I hope the other two questions are answered in this way. Okay. So this is simply the story of our nervous system. I don't think I have got anything to explain here. It starts with neuroception, how you perceive information and create stories to yourself, which creates an internal states. The internal state drives a feeling. The feeling drives a behavior. The behavior gets it back into the story. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, we start with stories, the narrators, and initiate a friend or a foe response for the neuroception, which makes us perceive the internal and the external world, converting itself into a state, leading to a feeling and leading to a behavior. You can start anywhere. Passing the questions. Okay. Okay, let's jump on with theory is theory. So let's jump on with some practice. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I want you to recall 3 different stories you are directing right now. We are all directors, right? Directors, artists, creators, everything that we are. What is the story you're directing now? 3 stories that you're directing now. Start with stories that are driving you to feel sad. Follow it up with stories that are driving you to feel bad. Then I want you to look at stories that make you feel happy. 5 minutes starts now if the instruction is clear. Just at the halfway stage, just in case helps take a time. No worries. But remember to complete with happy narratives.
So, could you repeat what you said last, sir?
And then remember to direct your story with happy. If that's what you're seeking. Is that what?
No, sir, I couldn't quite catch it. Could you repeat it again? Sorry,
I
sir.
was just saying, when you complete the direction of your stories, complete it with happy stories.
Okay, complete it. Okay, sir.
When you complete, don't get distracted. Stay with the thought because we have something to process. Seconds. Great. We are done now. Thanks for that. Stay with the same thought. You can see the ladder, right? Is my ladder visible to you, both in the screen and also on camera? Yes. What is visible? Camera is visible?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, this is the ladder that we are climbing all the time. The happy stories are the narratives that we tell our brain to stay safe, socially connected, and engaged. We go one step below. The narratives that we tell ourselves takes us one step up. It either sustains you at the top of the ladder, or it gets us down, where we start feeling mobilized, agitated, and frenetic state. Some of the tests that we have been running primarily shows many people are in the state of agitated frenetic. Very less population are there in the state of safe, social, and engaged. Continue to be in a state of mobilized or agitated or frenetic state. You are likely to go down to a state of numbness, collapsed, and eventually shut down. And it is this state, this is my contention, it is this state that needs therapy, psychiatry, counseling, etc. This stage needs cognitive intervention. This stage needs cognitive intervention. Passing the questions. So when you talk about sad stories, mad stories, what did you feel in the body? And where did you feel in the body? Anyone? No one wants to share?
So for mad stories, I was just feeling very frantic and agitated when I was thinking about that. And when I was thinking about happy stories, it just completely uplifted whatever state I was in. And when it comes to sad stories, again, I just fell down and then I was like, okay.
Just imagine constantly doing that. All the time telling yourself a sad story. All the time telling yourself a mad story. Just imagine now, I hope you can see my new ladder now.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
What does this bridge tell you? What type of bridge do you see?
Horizontal bridge.
Mm-hmm. Made of?
Made up of wood
and
rope.
Correct.
Which is tied up.
Yeah, it's a rope hanging bridge, right? How easy or difficult is it to walk into the bridge? And also just be mindful, there isn't any rails around this bridge. If you have to walk on this bridge, how easy or difficult can it be?
It will be difficult, sir.
There's a little bit of wanting, yes.
And as against climbing this ladder?
This will be much more easier, sir.
And what about this?
That is crazy, perhaps.
Isn't that what you're doing in life? Climbing this ladder all the time. Think of that. And we are looking for a strong ladder like this. Whereas the reality is you are on a ladder like this. Moving on. So, I hope you're able, if I put an I here for a moment, okay, let me put an I here, right? And nice, beautiful eyes. What does this represent now? What do you see? What do you visualize this to be? Are you able to visualize the tortoise? Or the tortoise is not apparent to your eyes?
No, so we can.
So, a typical tortoise comes out of the shell, scans the world for danger. Moment the danger is defined as reality. The tortoise, as we know, goes right into the shell. You can't knock the tortoise shell and motivate it to come out. If you, with mad stories and sad stories, is like tortoise moving you when you say, I feel mobilized, agitated, frenetic, you are moving into the shell. And it can be dark, it can be rage, anger, irritation, frustration, panic, fear, anxiety, worry, concerns. And you continuously stay there, you are likely to be frozen because you become immobile. Freezing is immobile. So you become immobile and you land with disassociation. Disassociate yourself from others. Numbness, depression, helplessness, hopelessness, trapped. The unfortunate thing, I'm saying unfortunate thing is, once you are in the state of collapse, there is no direct route to being socially engaged. It doesn't exist. You have to get back to the state of frenetic anger, mobilized, then climb the ladder of social life. I think there's a questions before I move to the last few slides. All right. So, to practical world, a typical employee engagement that we do talks about work environment. We talk about skills and tools that match our goals. Do we have them? Relationship that we have with manager, teamwork or relationship with colleagues and peers, autonomy that we need, work that is engaging and challenging. Is the personal and career growth taken care of? Is the brand good enough for me to work? Is employee voice and recognition being heard? Fit with the organization culture, am I fit with culture? And also remuneration. This is what a typical perception, employee perception of engagement is all about. Now, what drives this perception? The new model that we have developed is engagement is all about cognition, emotion, and behavior. The more we focus on cognitive skills, intervening at the point of agitation, the more engaged you will be. That's our submission. And we also believe the more you're able to manage your cognitive wellness, the more emotionally you will be. The more emotionally well-being you attain, the more you'll be behaving yourself in the most appropriate manner, striving for excellence, and therefore you're likely to be more engaged. So you can see it all starts with cognition. So what do? We have developed a simple tool on cognitive wellness, and along with that, we run a certified program on cognitive intervention. Anyone building professional health, wanting to be in the area of helping, approved by the International Counselors Association Malta and Chartered Managers UK. And the classes we run are primarily flipped classroom model, digitalized flipped classroom model, with 60% being practical, 40% being reality. So able to practice internal and external practitioners. So if you're interested, you can always reach out to me. But those are the closing slides. Going back to general slides for you to ask any questions anywhere. I'm all open for questions.
How to improve the cognitive abilities, which are fundamental for our move towards engagement.
Right. So to answer that, you can see this symbol here, which is actually N. This is V, and this is R. And this is like mental waves going up and down, right? First thing to intervene your cognition is your narratives. That is the N part. The V part is toning your vagus nerve, the vagal tone. And the R part is the response style. The response style drives the vagal tone, and the vagal tone collects the narratives that it gets. On the reverse, the narrative drives the vagal tone, and the vagal tone drives the response. So it's all about narratives. What are the vagal toning activities that we are doing, and how are we managing the response in the simplest of the answer in the given time that I can answer. So you can see a red signal, an yellow signal, and a green signal. I'm not talking about mindfulness. I'm not talking about meditation. I'm talking about toning the vagus nerve. I'm talking about managing the responses. I'm talking about capturing the narratives at the point of initiation, not at the point of conclusion. I'm talking about the stories at the beginning of the movie, not the climax. Climax needs therapy, psychiatry, counseling. No discussion about it. Introduction doesn't need psychiatry counseling. I hope I answered your questions, and I'm not sure. Any other questions?
Yes, you answered the question.
Thank you. Any other questions? To actually answer your question better, it would have been, we could have actually worked on how to work on your narratives had you all taken the test. Unfortunately, not many of you could take the test. Therefore, I did not decipher the test results for you. Otherwise, the initial thought that we are talking with your colleagues is about running the test and deciphering the test and making the whole session more practical.
Today, a survey indicates there are more disengaged employees than engaged employees. Is the lack of knowledge of this a reason, or in your view, what is the main reason?
let me try to rephrase your question because there's some distortion, sir. The survey says there are more disengaged employees than engaged employees. That's the first part I understood. The second part is why what makes it happen? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah. That's very simple. I'll give a simple example to make that easily understandable. Right? And I'll go back here and I'll actually go back to the previous slide. I'm working for a manager, and most of the response I get from a manager makes me feel this or this. There are less times I feel this. This probably is handed over to the so-called HR department to do this, which I disagree to, but that's not the reality. So whether I disagree or not, that's the reality. HR department is supposed to make employees happy. How crazy can that be? Anyway. Now, so the stories that I get from the managers make me sad and make me mad, and they are not intervened. I am left alone. Nobody comes and handles my cognition here. Therefore, I'm disengaged. What does disengagement means? Disengagement means I'm either mobilized, agitated, or frantic, and some of the employees move to a state of numbness, collapse, shut down, and what we call them? Deadwood. And what do we do to them? Exit. I hope I answered the question.
So there's a question in the chat box. Shall
Sure.
I read? How does cognitive intervention help in providing compensation in an organization?
Compensation?
In an organization.
Okay. That's the difficult one to answer because we are talking about mental wellness, we are talking about psychological wellness. I'm not talking about the, let me go to the survey here. I'm not talking about the employee engagement index. I'm talking about the emotional index, the behavioral index, certain basic hygiene factors, safety, of which compensation is one, are the basic platform. In other words, you cannot climb this ladder without this being in a stable ground. The stable ground are your compensation, hygiene, good environment, or reasonable environment. That's the ground on which you make the ladder stay. If you put the ladder on an uneven ground, of which compensation can be one, then the ladder is likely to be like this, making it even more difficult for you.
So there's one more question.
Mm-hmm.
How do we measure the cognitive health of employees, since it's something that a person feels?
That's why we have developed this tool. This tool essentially tells you what is the state of your narratives today and where are you in this ladder of narratives. In the 6 ladders, where exactly are you placed? What is the type of stories, ventral vagal toning activity you are currently doing? What if you do will make you better? What is the type of response you are currently dealing with and how to make them better? That's exactly what we are talking.
Is there a connection between this science, this tool, vis-a-vis the emotional intelligence?
Emotions starts with the narratives that you build. Narrative starts with what are you exposing your nerves to. What is the story the vagus nerve is collecting? Is it collecting a story of sadness? Is it getting a story of madness? Is it getting a story of happiness? And therefore, I can feel much more emotionally intelligent, better than what I am today. But if I don't know the narratives that I'm handling, and then you will call it resilience. Resilience is actually bouncing back, which means it is what I call the climax. It's not the beginning. Narratives decide the emotional intelligence in very simple terms.
Thank you.
So there's one more question.
So,
As a HR, how do we encourage the employees to take up the challenges?
where would they be in this ladder? Where will they be most appropriate to handle challenge now? Top, middle, or bottom?
No.
So make them feel at the top all the time. 1, 2. Let me also quickly retreat a bit. It is not about staying on the top all the time. It's about being able to navigate this all the time. Call that emotional intelligence, resilience, mental toughness, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. As we grow higher and higher, as we grow, we must be able to get comfortable walking on the bridge. The bridge is never going to be stable. This is the bridge that we are walking on, and this is the bridge we should be comfortable walking on. Help them to walk on this rope bridge. More questions?
Or emotions or something to do with the gender, or it varies person to person.
Is the biology varying from person to person?
Reasonably okay, small variation.
Yeah, biology is the same. Huh? So it's how you decide the narrators that decides your emotions. More questions?
So there are no more questions. Shall we move on to the vote of thanks?
Thank you very much.
Okay. I would like to invite Jagdish to give away the vote of thanks.
Good evening to one and all present here. I, Jagdish from MAHS department, would like to convey the vote of thanks for today's webinar. Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing yourself. Take this wonderful opportunity to thank our esteemed speaker, Mr. Ramamurthy Krishna, CEO of Potential Genesis HR Services LLP, for sharing his valuable insights and knowledge on the topic cognitive intervention and needed HR skills. I would like to share a few key takeaways from today's session. Deceptive brain signal drives emotion and affect focus on thinking. The ability to please people is called fawning and leads to no growth in an individual. Engagement is all about emotion, cognition, and behavior. We are the future HRs who really work on the understanding provided by our lively speaker. Sharing is caring, it's an age-old proverb. True to this thought, I would like to thank our PG Department of HRM pillar, our HOD Dr.N.C. Martin, for arranging this webinar, and our Professor Subhashin Sandhya for support to organize this webinar, providing us with an enlightening tool to the pragmatic arena of HR. Finally, I extend my gratitude to the participants in various professions and students. Kindly fill up the feedback form which is provided in the chat below with your name and email ID. Stay home, stay safe, and most importantly, get vaccinated. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Stay vaccinated. Thank you so much. Pleasure dealing with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.